Yeah, thank you so much. So, dear respected doctors, welcome you all and good evening for this academic event. So, my name is Anset Montero. I am National Sales Manager for Lupin Respiratory Spiritus Division. Talking about Lupin Respiratory vertical, as a vertical, we are for a volume of 1,150 plus crore franchise in India. We are proudly serving the medical fraternity with a dedicated field force of over 2,000 professionals across the country. We have a comprehensive range of products in pediatric respiratory segment, including orals, inhalers, intranasal medications, and inhalation devices. Lupin Respira Spiritus has been privileged to cater to more than 10,000 pediatricians across the country. Adding yet another feather to our cap, Lupin Respira Spiritus has ventured into the pneumococcal vaccine segment with the launch of Nucovax 13 in January this year. Your continued support has been the foundation of our strength. We sincerely look forward to your ongoing trust and encouragement, which will empower us to grow even stronger and serve better in future to you. So without taking much time, I invite Dr. Amok from our medical team to introduce Dr. Nitin Shah, sir. Dr. Amok, over to you.
Yeah, Anshadji. Thank you so much, Anshadji. Good evening to all. Let me share the screen first. Yeah. So good evening to all. I'd like to welcome Dr. Nitin Shah. Like he doesn't require actually the introduction because he's a very well-known doctor throughout the India as well as internationally. A short introduction to him. He's a head department of pediatric PD Hinduja Hospital, Mumbai, consultant pediatrician and a pediatric hematologist oncologist PD Hinduja Hospital, Mumbai. The areas of expertise of the sir is vaccinology and immunology, pediatric hematology, pediatric oncology, and primary immunodeficiency and HIV in pediatrics. He has several professional affiliations. Few of them I have noted here. Fellow Indian Society of Hematology and Transfusion Medicine. He was a president of Indian Academy of Pediatrics in 2006. Indian Academy of Pediatric Trainee Fellow in Hematology. There are several accolades to his name, honors and awards. I have tried to fetch some scientific advisor, IAP Committee of Immunization 2011 and 12. He has co-chaired the IAP Committee of Immunization 2006, scientific chairperson of Pedicon 2019, 2014, and editor of IAP Specialty Series of Books of Hematology, Infectious Disease, Pediatric HIV, Rational Anti-Infectives. He has a very good research in vaccinology, like seroprevalence of varicella, seroprevalence of hepatitis, safety of DPAT, safety and immunogenicity of DWT, hepatitis B vaccine, immunogenicity of prevalence of rabies vaccines, and the list goes on. So I welcome you, and we are honored, sir, that you are part of this webinar, and we will be getting a knowledge from your side regarding the PCV 13 vaccine and its science. So I welcome you, Dr. Nitin Shah, and handing over the session over to you, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you, Amog. Good evening to everyone who has taken time out late night to join this webinar on this very exciting new vaccine. So I will start my presentation. Let me first share my PPT. So you can all see my slides, right?
Yes,
okay.
sir. Yes,
All right.
it's visible, sir.
Right. So today I'm going to speak on this new vaccine, the tetanus toxoid conjugated 13-valent pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, which is the new entrant to the pneumococcal conjugate vaccine of the PCV portfolio in India. And this one is marketed by Lupin. So it's like the new kid on the block. And I think there's a lot of data that is interesting and I would like to share with you. And at the end, we can have some question answer if you have any queries. Before I start the scientific deliberation, my disclosure that I have received consultancy fees and research grant from several vaccine manufacturers, including the ones which are shown here. They make either one of the other PCV which is there in the market, including lupin, which has now marketed this new PCV 13. So if you look at the Indian map as on 2015, then as far as Hib is concerned, you can see before Hib introduction, the Hib disease prevalence was very high in the community. And after the introduction of the Hib, the disease disappeared. As you can see, most of them were less than 10. When it comes to pneumococcal, you can see a lot of states are still having a lot of high disease burden. And we have very recently introduced pneumococcal conjugate vaccine in the national program. And now it's being scaled up in the several states. And I'm sure in the years to come, we will probably see lesser and lesser of the pneumococcal invasive disease and non-invasive pneumococcal pneumonia, which is number one killer of the children of the world under the age of 5 years. We had PCV7, which came from Wyeth, now Pfizer, which was a very US-centric vaccine. It had those 7 serotypes, which were most prevalent in children below the age of 5 years, that time in USA. And we are talking about before 2000. So we're talking about 1995, 1996. This vaccine was then introduced world over, but WHO refrained from saying that it should be given to all children of the world, especially for the developing part of the world, till the time this vaccine has more serotypes which are prevalent in other parts of the world outside USA, including Europe, America, Australia, and Asia and Africa. So 3 lessons we learned since the introduction of PCV7 in the US national program and in certain other parts of the world, especially Europe and Australia. Number one, that it was a US-centric vaccine. So obviously, WHO said that have some more serotype. So if you look at the PCV7 serotype coverage that time in India it was very poor, less than 50%. And in fact, as you know, WHO says that any new PCV which comes in the market should cover at least 70% of the prevalent serotype causing invasive pneumococcal disease in children below the age of 5 years. So by that mark itself, PCV7 was not the ideal vaccine, but nonetheless, when nothing was available, even if it had 50% efficacy, this vaccine was used in our country in the private market, but never in the national program. The second lesson learned was about the cross protection. Now, when PCV7 was made, it was widely believed or it was perceived that 6B in the 7-valent vaccine will cross protect against 6A and 19F in the 7-valent vaccine will cross protect 19A. So even when 6A and 19 were important serotype, even in USA that time, these two serotypes were not included in the PCV7 vaccine. And indeed, after the introduction of the PCV7 in the national program in USA in 2000, this is a study done in 2005, 2006, so 4 or 5 years of use of PCV7 in the national program. You can see that the vaccine type disappeared from children to the tune of 96%, including those who had comorbidities, where it was 81%. There was some cross protection against 6A, though not 100%, somewhere around 70-75%. But when it came to 19A, there was absolutely no statistically significant cross protection. And in fact, besides this, there is not a single study which has actually shown that a 19F containing vaccine which does not have a 19A, like 19A is not there in GSK's vaccine also, it has not shown any meaningful decrease in the 19A disease. And the third lesson, and I think that's an important lesson from point of view of use of PCVs in the public health, was the significant herd effect. In fact, when PCV7 was introduced, there were 2 times more people who benefited by not developing invasive pneumococcal disease by one child benefiting because of direct protection because of vaccine. So 2 times more people in the community who are not vaccinated did not get the disease because there was blockage of transmission of the vaccine serotype from the children who are vaccinated to their near contact like the parents, grandparents, and in the community. So first time we showed that a killed vaccine like a PCV can also have a very significant herd effect. Now this is important because you can get away by not having good coverage but still benefit a lot of children, but you need to have coverage of at least 70-75% to have herd effect. And number two, first time that the killed vaccine can actually have a massive herd effect. And this will also have bearing on the adults, because today we don't have PCV in adults in our country. And yet when there's a meaningful coverage of PCV in children, the transmission of the serotype will block and the adults will not get those serotype disease to a large extent. All right. So when PCV was a US-centric vaccine, it had to increase the serotype to be declared by WHO to be used in every child born in this world. So we had several vaccines which came thereafter. The 10-valent vaccine from GSK, which included type 1, type 5, type 7F, which were important from developing country point of view. Then came the 13-valent vaccine from Pfizer, which added type 3, 6A, and 19A. Now, type 3 so far has not shown much meaningful decrease with any vaccine which has type 3, but will nonetheless the serotypes will persist to be there in the 13-valent vaccine as well as in the higher valency vaccine in the different manufacturer. We had two indigenous vaccine which came from India. First was the Serum Institute of India vaccine, which peculiarly had dropped type 4, 18C and 3, but retained 6A and 19A. And it was like a global vaccine made locally, looking at the 10 commonest serotypes seen in children below the age of 5 years in the world and not in India alone. And then a 14-valent vaccine from Biological E, which dropped 6A but added 22F and 33F as a futuristic serotype, which will probably be more important once these vaccine serotype disappear with meaningful coverage of this PCV in the world. And then now we have this new vaccine which has come, which is exactly the same as the 13-valent vaccine of Pfizer as far as serotype is concerned. But instead of having CRM197, which is the conjugate protein in the Pfizer vaccine, this vaccine has tetanus toxoid as the conjugate protein. So that's the only difference between the two, besides the antigen content of each serotype, plus and minus here and there. But generally, serotype coverage wise, these both vaccines are very, very same or very, very similar. So the first point of discussion, why 19A is important, which is there in this vaccine and several other vaccines, which is of course missing from PCV7 and the GSK PCV10. This is the data on countries using the PCV10 of GSK, and you can see several countries use: Canada, Chile, Finland, Colombia, etc. And if you look at the remaining disease burden after meaningful use of the vaccine for some few years, you can see the commonest first serotype is 19A, which means there was absolutely no cross protection against 19A, as also was shown in the US study using the PCV7. And why does this happen? Because you can see here very clearly. If you compare the pivotal trial for 19A between PCV13 of Pfizer and PCV7 of Pfizer, the PCV13 with 19A in the vaccine has 66-fold higher antibody titers against the 19A. And these are not just antibody, but these are the functional antibody as measured on what is known as OPA, or opsonophagocytic assay. And you compare the PCV10 of GSK and the PCV7, both don't have 19A, and you can see very poor 4 and 8 titers as compared to 442. So obviously you needed 19A in the vaccine to have protection against 19A disease. And as we know, 19A can lead to pneumonia, parapneumonia, sepsis, and can be drug resistant, multi-drug resistant. Fortunately, in our country, 19A is still not multi-drug resistant, but in several countries, it has become multi-drug resistant. For it to difficult to treat if you use a simple antibiotic like ceftriaxone. Now, if you look at the test of eating is in the pudding is eating it, right? So the top 3 countries are the ones using a 19A containing vaccine, which is PCV13, and the bottom 3 in the red are the countries using PCV10 of GSK, which does not have 19A. And you can see in children below the age of 5 years, moment 7 is switched to 13, there is a massive drop in 19A disease. And you can see in UK, after use of 7, actually the 19A went up. And then when 13-valent switch happened, the 19A drastically went down. Whereas you look at the 3 countries using PCV10 of GSK without the 19A, you can see in Chile, the disease went up. In New Zealand, it went up till the switch to 13-valent and the disease went down drastically. And even in Finland, after use of PCV10 without 19A, the disease went up. And not only that, as a part of herd effect, as I said, the herd effect is so strong with the PCV that for one child who benefit directly, there are 2 more people who benefit indirectly without the vaccination. And again, you see the top 3 countries in blue using PCV 13 with 19A. There is a massive decrease in the 19A disease in people above the 5 years who had not received the vaccine, whereas the bottom 3 using PCV 10 without 19A, you can see the disease went up in all the 3 countries. So from the control trial to effectiveness after use in the national program, very clearly it shows that you need to have 19A in your vaccine to prevent 19A disease. That's why if you see the WHO position paper talks about that if you have a country with high setting of 19A and 6C. Now why 6C? Because 6A cross protects against 6C, whereas 6B does not cross against 6C. Though it cross protects against 6A but not against 6C. So if you have a high 19A and 6C disease burden, then probably you will need a vaccine which has both 19A and 6A in your vaccine. All right, so that brings us to the second point why 6A is important, which is there in the PCV 13, which is not there in PCV 7, and it is not there in the PCV 10 of GSK, and is also not there in the PCV 14 by the biological E. So again, the 3 countries which use a 6A in the vaccine, that is your 13 valent vaccine, in Israel, USA, and UK, you can see 7 valent did decrease the disease to a large extent by 6B cross protecting 6A, and it continued to remain like that, flat below with switch to 13 valent. Now, when coming to a GSK's vaccine, which does not have 6A, you can see in Chile the disease went down, in New Zealand it was up and down, and in Finland also went down, which means there was some cross protection between 6B and 6A. For is not to the tune of 98% as you would expect if the serotype was there in the vaccine, but in the tune of around 75%. And again, you can see as a part of the herd effect, using the vaccine 7 valent before the switch to 13 valent, there was herd effect even seen by again 6A as a part of herd effect seen by cross protection by 6B. And you look at the 10 valent vaccine where 6A is not there. In Chile, it came down. In New Zealand, it went up. In Finland, it was plus minus, which means if you have 6A in the vaccine, then you have cross protection by 6B against 6A as well as direct protection by 6A itself in the vaccine, which makes it a very robust 6A disease preventing strategy. Whereas if you don't have, you have to completely rely on the cross protection, which may or may not be as perfect as you would want it to be. And why that is so? Because you can see here again, if you have 6A in the vaccine, then the titers are tenfold higher as compared to if you don't have 6A in the vaccine. And if you compare the bottom 2 vaccines, which both don't have 6A, you can see very poor titers. So which means if you have 6A in the vaccine, not only the titers are very high to direct protection, but also boost up the 6B cross protection created against 6A. And we were talking about the 6C because as I showed you, the WHO question paper talked about that if you have a setting of high 19 and 6C, then you should use a 6A and 19A containing vaccine. So what is the 6C? So first of all, on your top left side, you have the study from France where they looked at the nasopharyngeal carriage in children with otitis media, and they looked at children who had received PCV 13, which is 6A, and your children who had received PCV 7, which does not have 6A. And when you look at the effect of the 6C, you can see very classically that there was a much more meaningful decrease in 6C carriage if you had used PCV 13 because of the cross protection between 6A and 6C, whereas if you use PCV 7 which did not have 6A, then the protection was not as good. And same thing in Israel, Dr. Ron Degan's group did a very elaborate study right from 2 months of age, children followed up to 2 years of age to look at their carriage in the nasopharynx done every month. And they looked at children who had received PCV 7 versus children who had received PCV 13, which is 6A. And you can see when it comes to 6C, there was a 51% statistically significant more efficacy against carriage than if you had used a vaccine which does not have 6A. So 6C cross protection is important by 6A till the time you have 6C in some vaccine. Today is not there in any of the vaccines which are available in our country. And what is the evidence that 6C can go up? if you use a vaccine without a 6A, you can see this is the incidence of 6C. Your bottom side left hand corner, you can see the 6C disease per 100,000. After the introduction of PCV7, we did not have 6A in children below the age of 5 years and population above the age of 5 years, including overall. You can see the disease went up, say, in children from 0.09 to 0.5. Small number, 0.5 per 100,000 is small number, but still significant increase from 0.09 to 0.5. And why does this happen? Because you can see very clearly. You have 7-valent vaccine which has 6B. 6B has 100% protection against 6B, obviously, has 70% cross protection as 6A, as I showed you, but has poor 20% cross protection against 6C. Whereas if you have PCV13, which has both 6B and 6A, it is 100% against 6B, 100% against 6A, and 96% against 6C. So till the time you are able to have 6C in your vaccine, there's a great advantage of 6A in the vaccine by preventing the disease burden with 6C in the community. That's why again we come back to the same WHO paper which talks about 19 and 6C both. If it is there in your community, then a 19 and a 6A containing vaccine is what you would use in your country. All right. Now let's talk about this vaccine and first understand how a new vaccine is licensed. You know, PCV7 underwent a double-blind randomized controlled trial in Kaiser Permanente in North California with a placebo, and interim analysis showed such overwhelming efficacy of the vaccine that the ethical committee withdrew the permission to continue the trial, and they say break the code and give the placebo arm the vaccine because we cannot allow children to die. So that was the only vaccine which had a double-blind randomized controlled trial. Now, this type of DRB cities are so difficult to do in developing country. You have to do it in developed country with they have an ongoing surveillance. But unfortunately, these countries already have some PCV in their national program. So for any subsequent PCVs to come, it will be very difficult to do a double-blind randomized controlled trial for efficacy. So WHO came to the rescue to say that any new PCV which will come, which will be now licensed without an efficacy trial in the field, based on immunological non-inferior study with an existing vaccine like PCV7 or PCV13, which already has some efficacy trial in the past. So that is how you are now going to study and license vaccine based on non-inferiority on immunology study. So what is the immunology study? So they looked at IgG, and IgG, there are two criteria. IgG seroconversion more than 0.35 microgram per ml. So if the new vaccine is compared with an existing vaccine, and you look at the confidence intervals of the difference, and if the lower bound confidence intervals is not below -10, then that is taken as immunologically non-inferior. That is as far as seroconversion is concerned. What about the, let's say for example, the new vaccine has 90.6 seroconversion against a serotype. The existing vaccine is 93.3. So the difference is -2.7, which could be as low as -5.6 to as much as 0.35. So far as the -5 is not below -10, which means not -11, -15, -20 like that, this new vaccine is taken as immunologically non-inferior to the existing vaccine. Same way for the IgG, the titers, you take the ratio of the new vaccine versus the existing vaccine. And again, you calculate the 95% confidence intervals of this ratio. And the lower bound confidence interval should be not below 0.5, which means the new vaccine should generate at least half the titers as the existing vaccine, if not more. And just to give an example, suppose the new vaccine has 1.73 titer against, say, serotype 1, and the existing vaccine has 2.26 IgG titer, the ratio is 0.77, which could be as low as 0.67 to as high as 0.88. As much as the 0.67 is above 0.5, that means this is immunologically non-inferior. So the criteria for licensing is based only on these two criteria. IgG seroconversion, lower bound confidence should be above -10, and the ratio of the titer, the lower confidence interval should be above 0.5. But we also study OPA because you may have IgG which may not work in vitro, in vivo, because you are doing IgG by ELISA method, where OPA looks at oxaloacetic acid, which means a functional assay. For example, you take vaccinated child serum, which has say anti-19 antibody. You take the 19A live pneumococcus and you add the human complement and it will kill the 99. Then you dilute those serum, again keep on doing till the time you reach a dilution where 50% of 99 is killed. That is how you study opsonophagocytic assay, which is like a functional antibody. Now the cutoff taken for seroconversion for OPA is more than 1:8 and OPA titer also are generated, but there are no criteria for non-inferiority as far as OPA response is concerned. So we will look at the OPA surely that there should not be very poor OPA, but we don't have criteria to say of non-inferiority on OPA. So the criteria for non-inferiority is only on IgG, whereas OPA is what something like clinicians should look at. I think I made this very clear because this is the basis of understanding any new PCV which is licensed in the world. So let's look at this now. How was this new PCV licensed in India? So it was a randomized observer blind control trial because the packs are different. So it was compared with the PCV13 of Pfizer in 3+1 schedule, which means 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks, and a booster given at 12 to 15 months. Now the primary phase was over between Jan to August 23, and the booster phase is already over, and the booster data is already available and given to the DCGI. And very soon, this vaccine will have license not only for the 3 primary series, but also for the booster, and we'll come to that a little later. But coming to this pivotal trial, this data which I'm showing you is only following the first 3 primary doses given at 6, 10, and 14 weeks. So you look at the IgG seroconversion, you look at the OPA seroconversion, you look at the IgG titer ratio, you look at the OPA titers but no ratios, and then you look at the non-inferiority criteria of -10 and 0.5, and then you know whether it's inferior or not inferior. So you can see 344 infant randomized 1:1 to receive either the new vaccine from Lupin or the existing vaccine from Pfizer, both being 13-valent vaccines. And booster data is submitted, as I said. Now I will show you some primary data, but full set of data is still not available. Now look at the IgG seroconversion. So IgG seroconversion above 0.3, you can see here in this Indian study, it was 99.4 for say type 1 with the new vaccine and 98.9 with the old vaccine. Like that, if you see, the bars are looking very similar, very tall. So the difference between the two vaccines on the criteria of non-inferiority of not going below -10 was met with for all 13 serotypes. And also all 13 serotype had more than 90% seroconversion, and 11 of them had more than 95% seroconversion. So that is very promising that this vaccine is going to be very, very effective. Now coming to the titer ratio, you can see here again, you look at the titer ratio, like say type 1 is 4.95 with the new vaccine, 5.3 with the existing vaccine, and like that you can see the bars are very similar. None of the bar look at half the level of the existing vaccine. So again, as none of the ratios lower bound confidence were below 0.5, non-inferiority criteria was met with for all the 13 serotypes. So the licensing of IgG seroconversion met with for all 13 serotype and IgG titer ratios met with for all 13 serotype. This vaccine was licensed by the drug authority in India. But as I said, clinicians should also look at OPA, though there are no inferiority criteria. But you look at a visual impression, you can see here, this is OPA seroconversion, the blue being the new vaccine and the red being the existing vaccine of Pfizer. And you can see the heights are very, very similar. Just to give an example, type 1, 95.3 versus 95.3, very similar. Let's take 19A, 100 versus 97.6, very similar. So very good seroconversion on OPA titer, on OPA seroconversion and OPA titers. Overall, the OPA titers were little lower with Lupin vaccine compared to Pfizer. But as I said, because there are no non-inferiority criteria, it's good to see that the OPA generated by Lupin vaccine is also significant. And that's how it's going to work and lead to a functional capability of preventing disease. You also have to have safety. So this is the safety. The green is the Lupin vaccine. The bluish is the Pfizer vaccine. You look at the local side effect like pain, redness, swelling, tenderness, very similar. Swelling, in fact, was half with the new vaccine compared to the Pfizer vaccine. When you look at the systemic side effect, fever, irritability, anorexia, crying, etc., again, very similar. So there was no significant difference between the two vaccine or any side effect, except, as I said, tenderness and swelling. Both were much lower with lupin vaccine as compared to the Pfizer vaccine. All right, now what about the booster? Because we are using 3+1 in our private schedule, whereas this licensing, as you would have read, is given for 3+0. Now, very funnily, the DCGI for serum vaccine instituted the primary data only with 3+0. With B's vaccine, 14-valent vaccine, they insisted on primary licensing study only with 3+0. Now you want to study 3+1, you are left to you, you can use it, but based on 3+0, they will give licensing. But luckily, this vaccine had also the booster arm inbreed in the pivotal phase 3 trial. So that 3+1 schedule is ongoing and the data is available, and I'll show you some data later. All right. Now this is so this is now we look at other studies. So you can see this is the study done in China. All right, this vaccine has come from China, as you know. So when you talk of booster data, while we mature our booster data, and I'll show you some data at the end, but there is enough data on the booster study in China in the original vaccine. This vaccine is available there for more than 8 or 10 years. So there, when this vaccine was tried, you can see the paper is 2022, which means it was studied somewhere in 2019 and 18. The only vaccine of international brand available in China that time was the PCV 7. As you know, China never allowed PCV 13 to be licensed in China. So this vaccine, when it compared PCV 13 of lupin, original manufacturer in China. In fact, we can't say lupin, but the original manufacturer with PCV 7 of Pfizer is 3+1. And they had two schedules, 3 for 5 months and 2, 3, 4 months, and a booster at 12 to 15 months. And again, the same way, primary endpoints are IgG seroconversion and IgG titer ratio. Also look at the OPA seroconversion and OPA titer ratio. And you can see even more number of children, 1,000 plus infant randomized 1:1 to receive the original Chinese vaccine and the PCV 7 of Pfizer. And look at, and you can see the booster arm also had 500 children, of which 486 actually finished the trial. So again, you look at the 7 for the 7. Now you cannot compare all 7 versus 13 because the 13-valent vaccine obviously has the remaining 6 serotype. So first on the left hand side, the 7 common serotype, you can see the bars are very similar. So except for 6B, the non-inferiority criteria were met with all these 6 other serotypes. And for the extra 5 serotype, you can see there was more than 95% seroconversion for the additional 6 serotype with the new vaccine. And you look at the post-booster, the 6B also, the difference disappeared, and all the 7 common serotype, they were statistically not significantly lower as compared to the PCV 7. And for additional 7 serotype, of course, there was boosting, and the seroconversion was almost seen in more than 95%. For most of the serotype, it was more than 99%. Now coming to the OPA, seroconversion for the common serotype, again, you can see the bars are very similar. And for the additional serotype, again, except for type 3, which was 86%, for the rest of them with the new vaccine was more than 93 to 95%. And post booster, you can see the difference for the 6B also disappeared, and all the 7 serotype look very similar between the two vaccine. Whereas for the additional 6 serotype, again, you can see there was boosting, and more than 95% seroconversion was seen against all the 6 additional serotype. So that's as far as seroconversion. Coming to the titers, you can see here for the common 7 serotype, the non-inferiority criteria was met with between the new vaccine and the 7-valent vaccine of Pfizer. And for additional serotype, obviously, there were hardly any titers seen with the PCV 7 because those serotypes are not there. Whereas for the PCV 13, as those serotypes are there in the vaccine, there was a massive increase in the titers. And again, post-booster, you can see there was absolutely no difference between the new vaccine and the existing 7-valent vaccine for the 7 common serotype. And for the 6 additional serotype, the titers went up higher post booster. Like say for type 1, it went from 2.1 to 2.7. For 6, say for 7F, it went up from 0.5 to I mean, so on and so forth. So you can see all the serotypes are seen in the graph that I'm showing you here. All right, and what about OPA titers? So you can see OPA titers, though there are no non-inferiority criteria, for the common 7 serotype, there were enough titer generated both by the new vaccine and the old vaccine. And for the 6 additional serotype, you can see the titers have been very high as is expected, and post-booster, the titers went up even further. So we have this trial from China, which has actually looked at 3+1, and it shows that post-booster data also is very promising. Now we have another study which is in toddlers in China, where those children who are between 1 to 2 years and who are naive to any PCV, that means they have not received any PCV as in the first year of life. Now they received 2 doses of either this new PCV 13 or the PCV 7 of Pfizer, which was available that time, 8 weeks apart. So 2 doses given 8 weeks apart, and they looked at the safety and immunogenicity both on IgG and OPA. Now, what did the data show? So you can see for the 7 common serotype, IgG response, seroconversion more than 0.35, nearly 100% with both the vaccine. For the additional serotype, again, for all the serotype, it's almost more than 95%, and for some of them, it is 100%. And for the titer ratio, you can see here for IgG titer ratio, statistically no difference between the new vaccine and the old vaccine for the 7 common serotype, and for the additional serotype, the titers are obviously higher with the new vaccine. In same way, OPA seroconversion more than 1:8 on your left hand side for the 7 common serotype, very similar seroconversion to the tune of 95% plus, and for the additional serotype, except for type 1 which was 88, the remaining were more than 95%. And the post booster, you can see, I mean post second dose, the titers for the OPA, again you can see are very meaningful with both the vaccines, though overall titers were little more higher with Pfizer than the Lupin vaccine, but nonetheless the titers generated by the 13-valent vaccine were highly significant. Now, what is the long-term data? You can say, okay, you have done 2+1, you have done, I mean, you have done 3+0 in India, 3+1 in China, and you also have the toddler data. Have we followed up these children for long-term data? So you can see the Chinese study, which had originally taken children to receive 3 doses at 2 months, 3 months, and 4 months, and they were followed up in the next year after the booster was given in the second year, and they followed up to see how much is the titers remaining, and you can see the titers are still very high compared to the baseline for both the common serotype as well as the additional serotype with both PCV 13 and the PCV 7. So not only we have data with 3+1, but we also have the persistence of the booster data till 2 years. So as you know, when you give any vaccine, there is a very high titer 1 month after the last dose. Then there is a drop in the titers in the first year or up to 18 months, and then it remains plateau, stable for many years. And that's exactly what is happening with this vaccine also when they were studied 1 year after the booster. Okay, last question. What is the serotype coverage with various vaccines which are available in our country, including this PCV 13? So if you look at the PCV 13, which is in the blue, the Serum Institute of India's PCV, which is in the brick red color, the GSK's PCV 10, which is in the green color, and the biologically is 14-valent vaccine, which is in the violet color. Then you can see here PCV 13, and we have 4 or 5 data set. SIP, basis, there's a review of last 10 years, there's a PDOPS data, and there's a very small study by Dr. Nisarga's group, which was done way back in 2009 to 11. So if you discard that, of course, there were only 33 isolates. So, one isolate plus minus for any vaccine, it will make a huge difference. But nonetheless, you can see a PCV 13 had a coverage of 86.1%. But even if you discard that, for the remaining 4, where the serotypes, I mean, the numbers are 300, 80, 1300, 450, etc. In all these 4, you can see the PCV 13 in the blue, like say in SCP is 72%, in basis it is 78%, in review it is 76%, and in the PDOPS it is 78%. So it's much more than the existing vaccines which are available in our country. So you can see here these are the very high zero, and mind you, well, WHO says the new vaccine should be more than 70% coverage. So by that, if you look at the GSK's vaccine, it's 63, 64, 67. So it would not even qualify to be included, but nonetheless, it was licensed many years back before this new vaccine came in. And this is a single center study from Vellore, which looked at IPD isolates alone, which either pneumonia, meningitis, sepsis, peritonitis, and they did both serotyping as well as PCR based, like almost 40 isolates were studied by PCR, and 170 were the total number of cases. And you can see even here it shows that the coverage by PCV 13 will be like something like 74.1%. So if I added Velo study, again you can see it matches with the remaining 4 database, which has shown 72, 78, 76 and 78% coverage for the serotype seen in India in children below the age of 5 years. So if I have to conclude, this new PCV 13 has a phase 3 pivotal trial in India, which has shown that it is as immunogenic as PCV 13 from Pfizer. This new vaccine, which is PCV 13 with tetanus toxoid, has phase 3 trial, which has shown it is less local side effect like pain and tenderness as compared to the Pfizer vaccine. The new PCV 13 has done with 3+1 data. And it also has a 2 long-term persistent immune response study, which is promising. It would cover up to 78% of serotype in children. And very recently, as I said, the 3+1 data from India is submitted to DCGI. And I have seen the data. Of course, I can't reveal here because still when the review by the DCGI, but at least the seroconversion seems very promising. And again, it is for all 13 serotype compared with Pfizer 13 valent vaccine, it is non-inferior following the booster. So very soon the PI, the product insert, will change from 3+0 as a recommended schedule to 3+1 schedule in the PI that we will use. So this will be first Indian vaccine which has a booster data and is already over and is submitted to DCGI and is likely to get a actual recommendation on the PI to use it as 3+1 schedule. Well, I thank you very much for your patient hearing. I hand over mic back to the organizers for any question or any doubt that you have in your mind. Well, thank you. Hello, someone is going to take over.
Yeah. Arvind, can you unmute the audience so that they can take the questions?
Yeah, done, sir.
Yeah. So I request the doctors, the delegates, they can definitely take the questions. We have one of the finest, faculty here, Dr. Shah. So you can unmute yourself now and you can take the questions.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Who's saying? Who's speaking?
Hi, sir. I'm
Yeah,
Dr.
Doctor.
Lalit Mohan Kaushik from Delhi.
Yeah, Dr. Lalit. Please go ahead. You can show your face, sir.
Just a moment, sir. Just a moment. I'll just switch it on.
And request anyone who's asking question also to please
Am
put
I
on your
visible?
video so that I know who's speaking to me instead of me talking to a wall.
No.
Yeah,
That's
Lalit Mohan, go
it's
ahead.
better, sir. Definitely. Sir, I wanted to know, hey, by the data that you've shown, it was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
From the data that you have shown, we have been using GSK vaccine all along.
Yes.
And it's not even qualifying the basis.
Correct.
It's not even reaching 70%.
Correct.
Prevnar somehow is a good vaccine. It's a very good vaccine.
Correct.
But 22F, 32F is not being covered, which has actually increased. And the seroprevalence
So far,
data
it
from
has not increased, Dr. Lalit Mohan. It likely to increase as is experienced in the Western country. It can go up to 5%. As on today, 22F, 32F together are less than 1%.
Okay, but IPD caused by these two strains is significant.
No, IPD only I'm talking about. In today's data for 22F and 33F, all these 4 database, SC basis, as I showed you, if you look at 22F and 33F, it's together is less than 1%.
Okay.
So it's a futuristic serotype. So not only 22F, 33F. I mean, let me open up the Pandora's box. So you have a MSD's vaccine, which is 22F, 33F, and also a 6A. I don't know when it will come here. You have the 20-valent vaccine of Pfizer, which is already marketed in India, but only for adults above the age of 18 years.
Yeah.
That has 7 additional serotypes than the 13-valent, including 22F and 33F. So this race is going to continue. You already have a 23-valent vaccine by MSD in USA, which is only for adults there. It has 11 different serotypes than the 13-valent vaccine of Pfizer. All right, and biologically itself is working on a 22-valent conjugate vaccine, which will cover more serotypes so that they can also apply it for adult. So like this, the race is going on. Today, as on today, of the available vaccine, 22F33F is around 1%. In future, after use of PCV in national program, say over next 5 years, with more than 80-90% coverage, we will have some more serotype emerging, and I'm sure all the vaccine will have to add those serotype in the future vaccines.
Sir, I wanted to ask the interchangeability of the vaccines, and number two, if a
Correct.
child has received Prevenar as the basic vaccine at 6, 10, 14 weeks,
Correct.
then can he be given a booster of the
It's
14
right.
valent vaccine?
Okay, so first of all, you don't change the brand by choice. If you don't know or that brand is not available with you or for some reason, then you can do it. Always go from lower to higher valency and not vice versa. So I would not give someone 3 doses of PCV 13 or 14 and then give a PCV 10 as a booster. But those who received 3 doses of PCV 10, I can give. The only vaccine which have actually scientific data on interchangeability is between GSK's 10 valent and 13 valent of Pfizer, where children who had received 3 primary doses of GSK's vaccine were randomized to receive a booster also of GSK vaccine or a booster only 1 dose of PCV 13 of Pfizer, and they showed that for the common serotype there was much better boosting with PCV 13 than PCV 10, and for the additional serotype even that 1 dose was enough in the second year. So scientifically data is there only with these two vaccines. So other vaccines interchange data is not there. But fortunately the immune system does not know the brand, it knows the antigen. So my scientific guess is that if you change a brand between similar vaccine, probably it will not matter. As I have shown you here, both this PCV 13, the Pfizer and the new vaccine are so similar in the immunogen data that actually it would not really matter if you interchange the brand, but not by choice, but by default.
ठीक, sir. Thank you,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else wants to ask a question? Please unmute and
Good evening, sir.
hi Pradeep.
Again, yeah, thank you. It's always good to hear. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Sir,
Thank you, sir.
sir, again, a futuristic question. Very soon we'll be 20 valent for adult. Will this
Yes,
20 valent
it's
vaccine?
already available.
Acha, okay. In
It's
mine
already
is
marketed. Yeah, they got license already. Yes.
all right, all right. So after adult vaccination, the 20 valent, which is appearing to be good, being a single dose and
Correct.
reasonable coverage. Is it going to have an impact on pediatric vaccine, pediatric pneumococcal disease also?
So
Somehow,
20 valent.
availability.
So Pfizer 20 valent vaccine is licensed for both adult and children in USA. It has
Yes.
replaced PCV 13. But in India, they have yet to do a trial in children, so they have got license only for above 18. So today we can't discuss that for children, but surely for tomorrow they may get a license for children, then it will replace the PCV 13. Mind you, PCV 20 comes at a cost which is 1,000 rupees more than the PCV 13. So when it's 1 dose, it may not matter, but when it's 4 doses, the cost may matter.
I was just imagining about the herd immunity, which adult vaccination may
The
cause.
herd immunity is never reversed because you are never going to achieve 85% coverage in adults with any vaccine. So it's always from child to adult and not vice versa. It's the children who cough on the parents and grandparents and lead to transmission, never the other way. Children are the harbingers of transmission of hepatitis A, varicella, influenza, pneumococcal disease, and so on and so forth. So you block by children vaccination, you prevent disease in adults. Like in China, they gave live hepatitis A vaccine to 1 to 15-year-old children with more than 90% coverage. The disease disappeared from the entire community, including adults. Same with influenza, Japan started school program, compulsory vaccination for children. The disease disappeared even from the adults. Moment they made it voluntary, the vaccination coverage dipped down. Adults also started getting that disease. So same way is true for many diseases that children are the main source of transmission. But one more interesting fact, Dr. Pradeep, now that you asked for PCV 20 in adults, you have taken a PCV 13 in adult, you have to take the PPSV 23 if you are immunocompromised or when you become 65. But if you have taken PCV 20, then you don't need that.
Yes, it's a single dose. Thank you. Thank you.
I saw Dr. Ravindra Sunavane for some time. Hi, sir.
Hello, sir.
Ah,
Sir, actually, I joined in late actually.
अच्छा.
Sir, याचं recording मिळेल का sir आम्हाला?
So that Dr. Vikram or the tech support is I go to archive this and make it available to someone to see
Yes,
later if they missed it.
Recording is there, sir. We'll figure.
So they will share the link with you, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Vikram.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Sir, म्हणजे सध्या आता हे under 1 year it is only under 1 year we can give, ना?
So this vaccine is new. So the ACVIP has not taken the stand. Of course, the DCA has given the approval for 3+0 as on today. But as I said, very soon it will become 3+1. But till that happens, IIP will take a stand. Like say for Pneumosil of Serum Institute of India, they have data only on 3+0. And they also now have on 2+1, but not 3+1. They data still not come out. And yet, based on the 3+1 data in the Gambia, ACVIP said that you can use Serum Institute vaccine as 3+1 because the biological ease vaccine has no trial on 3+1 anywhere in the world. They have refrained giving that status to biological vaccine for the booster dose till the time they show a booster. Here, because they have a 3+1 in China, I'm sure ACVIP, even before DCI says permission, will take a similar stand as they have taken for serums vaccine to allow this vaccine to be used as 3+1. But even before ACVIP meets, maybe the DCI itself will permit, then the PI will change soon, and then you won't have to worry about using it as a booster.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Dr. Monterio.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. On behalf of Lupin, I would like to thank everyone, for taking out their time and being present for this, academic event. And very special thanks for Dr. Nitin Shah for taking up this important session and for the wonderful insights that you have shared, sir. So, and at the same time, I'd like to thank my entire, Salesforce team who have taken time to coordinate across the country, my marketing team, and our medical team who made this event a successful event. Thank you so much and good night to everyone.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Good night, sir. Thank you,
Bye. Good
everyone.
night, Om Prakash. Bye.
Bye, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Bye,
Thank
Naveen.
you, sir.